One of the major challenges is getting funding for research in dissemination implementation science in healthcare. Some of the funding agencies, the newer ones like the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, are focused on comparative effectiveness and dissemination implementation science, but NIH, for example, is relatively new to this field, and it's still difficult to get funding in this area. So one of the major challenges, both with getting funding and with getting manuscripts published in D&I science, is the fact that reviewers aren't necessarily well-versed in this area. For example, reviewers are more used to classical clinical trials rather than pragmatic trials. And for example, things that are inherent and very important to pragmatic trials, such as heterogeneity of the population, are actually seen as problems in classic clinical trials. And so that often you're being critiqued by people who are not well-versed, and your manuscripts and grant reviews suffer for that reason. That's another barrier.
We know that in general there's pennies on the dollars that are spent on the actual translation of innovation, the dissemination and implementation, compared to the dollars invested in the creation of that innovation. If we look to the private sector, for example, we see that the spending is much more balanced, meaning that there is a tremendous amount of investment made in the translation, we might say marketing and promotion, in order to get adoption. I think that occurs for a reason. That's what you have to do in order to be effective in a very busy world that we live in. And I think one of the challenges is how do we get that same level of sustained investment in the public sector. I have a good deal of enthusiasm for the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute itself and the work that it's doing in order to address both of these. This institute was enacted or formed with the Affordable Care Act. It has a national focus and mission to really get information out to patients and providers so they can make more informed decisions. And they are investing and increasing their investment annually in the excess of $500 to $600 million a year in this. And I think that their agenda and their focus will really serve as a voice to some of these and a solution to some of these challenges I raised. I am excited about the field of dissemination and implementation science because I think we're at a very unique juncture in our history. There's greater recognition of the need to invest in better ways to communicate and to encourage adoption of innovation so that we are efficient and effective in doing that. And it's an exciting time to see the nation really rally around this.